What's up, guys? Neil Orfield here, and I'm going to show you how I'll be setting up my fantasy cruncher for tonight's single game slate between the Chargers and the Colts. I'll be setting up for the largest field GPP on FanDuel. While you're coming in, I'd appreciate it if you could hit that like button on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you want to get alerts when our shows go live, just hit the notification bell. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is adjust my columns so I see what I want to see in the middle of the screen. I've got a quick view saved. And what I want to see in the middle of the screen is ownership projections, my projection, exposure cap, and how much I'm getting of different players once I have run a crunch. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the MVP spot. I'm going to set an exposure cap there of 20% so I can get no more than 20% of any player. And then finally, I'm going to sort by projection and remove everybody from my player pool who has a projection of 0. So I'm going to scroll down, find those players, and I'm just going to click and scroll. And the only reason I'm doing this is to save myself some time when making groups later. If all these players are in there, it makes it harder to find the players you actually want in your player pool. So just going to remove all of them. Okay, looks good. Next, I'm going to go into the advanced options. I'll be working in 2 tabs here, the general tab and the groups tab. Starting in the general tab, unique players per lineup, default set to 1. I'm going to leave that at 1 for a 150 set. If you're making 40 or fewer lineups, I would recommend changing this to 2 unique players per lineup, just for the sake of diversifying your lineup set. Salary cap, not going to set a minimum. I will set a maximum just for the purpose of avoiding the most duplicated lineups. Here I'm leaving $1,500 on the table by setting a max salary of $58,500. I think that's a pretty good starting place. Your lineups will still look pretty good, have a real shot at winning, and they won't be nearly as duplicated in general as the lineups using the full $60,000 salary. Of course, that's not always the case, but it's a good general rule. Offensive players versus defense, the default is set to a max of 2 players. I'm going to change that to a max of 4 players. So I could have 4 players from one team against just the defense of the opposing team. Not something a lot of people like to do, but it is a lineup that can win. We've seen it win this year. So I like to allow for it in my lineup set. Exposure cap, I'm going to leave this at 100%. You saw I already changed it to 20% in the captain spot specifically. And randomness, I'm going to set this to 30%. If you want more control over your lineups, set this number lower. I know some people who use 0% randomness because they want complete control over their lineups. That's not the way I play, so I'm going to leave this at 30%. Minimum projection included in calculation, the default is set to 3. I'm going to leave this at 3. If there are players who project for fewer than 3 fantasy points and I want them to be in my player pool, I'm just going to manually boost their projection to get them above that 3 threshold. And then players from each team max. Default set to 4. I'm going to leave that at 4 so I can have 4 players from one team against just one of the opposing team. All right, next I'm going to go into the groups tab. Going to make some groups surrounding my quarterbacks. Starting with Justin Herbert at MVP. I'm going to make him my key player. I'm going to name this group MVP. And then I'm going to add all of these Chargers pass catchers to the secondary group here. And I'm including running backs here. Austin Eckler, one of the more involved running backs in the passing game in the entire NFL. Okay. Justin Herbert, he is a decent runner. He's not, elite, but he rushes for more than 10 yards per game. He had in his first 2 years in the NFL, he had something like 8 rushing touchdowns. I don't think he's scored one yet this year on the ground, but we know he's capable. So I think with Justin Herbert, with the, at least potential for rushing spike weeks, I'm still going to require at least one player from this set. So I'm going to say if any key player used, then use at least one from this set. I'm not going to require two, but I am going to give projection boost to these pass catchers to make it more likely that I get multiple. In general, I give smaller boosts to running backs. Don't necessarily need to with a guy like Austin Eckler, who is so involved in the passing game. On the other hand, though, he does project so well, 15 fantasy points, one of the higher, maybe the second highest after Herbert of the entire pool. So he projects well enough that I'm just going to give him a little bit of a smaller boost. I don't want to have Austin Eckler in every single lineup where I've got Herbert at MVP. So I think this looks about right. I'll start here. Again, it's just trial and error. Guys, we have a great offer for new users only. You can get full access to everything Stokastic has to offer for NFL for 3 days free. Projections, ownership, 1v1 tools, lineup generator, top stacks tool, zero risk because it's all free. Sign up now using the link in the description of this video. Note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included in this offer. Then I'm going to do the same thing, make a Nick Foles MVP group. So I'm finding Nick Foles at MVP, making him my key player. And then I'll add all of these Colts pass catchers to a secondary group. And I'll include the running backs here as well. Pretty small sample size with Deion Jackson and Zach Moss. But both have had some games with several targets, so I'm going to include them here. All right. For Nick Foles, he is a statue out there, not a lot of rushing upside. I'm going to actually just change this to if any key player is used, then use at least two players from this group of Nick Foles. Not giving any kind of boost or anything like that. I'm just saying if I've got Nick Foles at MVP, I want two pass catchers from the Colts elsewhere in the lineup. And then I'll do the same thing in the flex. With Justin Herbert in the flex. I'm going to find him, make him my key player. Then add all of these Chargers pass catchers to the secondary group. Again, I'm including the running backs. And now because I've got Herbert in the flex, I can include the pass catchers in the MVP spot as well. All right, looks good. Don't need to add everybody. Just the guys who project well enough to potentially be MVPs. Okay. And for Justin Herbert, I'm going to leave it just like this. Of course, I said that. And I've got Isaiah Spiller with his meager projection, but whatever. Doesn't really matter. I've got Justin Herbert in here. I'm going to require at least one pass catcher in every lineup with Justin Herbert, even in the flex. It's a little bit debatable whether you should. It could happen that Justin Herbert is optimal in the flex without bringing any pass catchers along. He does have at least a little bit of rushing upside, so you don't necessarily need to require it. But I don't want to see a ton of lineups that have Herbert in the flex without any pass catchers. So you could change this and say, only apply plus minus adjustments and then give boost to all the pass catchers when you have Herbert in the flex. So you don't necessarily require it, but you're still more likely to get to multiple. I think I'm just going to require it. It's a little bit easier. And I think most likely if Justin Herbert is optimal, he's going to have at least one pass catcher along with him. So I'm just going to set this as my group, and then I'm going to do the same thing for Nick Foles. So finding Nick Foles in the flex, make him my key player. And then to the secondary group, add all of these Colts pass catchers. including in the MVP spot. All right, good enough. And same thing, I'm just going to leave it just like this. If you've got Nick Foles, require at least one pass catcher somewhere else in the lineup. So that's going to do it for now with the groups. And here's where the fun begins, the trial and error, figuring out, do my lineups look the way I want them to? What do I need to do to make them look better? So I'm just going to start. I'm going to crunch out 150 lineups using my projections, which are the Stokastic projections. All right, there we've got 150. So first thing I do is I'm going to look at the lineups themselves. Do they correlate how I want them to? First lineup I see has Justin Herbert with 3 pass catchers and Alec Pierce. So that looks good. Justin Herbert in the MVP spot with multiple pass catchers. That is my preference. Second lineup, we've got Nick Foles at MVP with Deion Jackson and Paris Campbell. That looks good. And then we've got Herbert with Everett. A lot of good correlations here. Next lineup, we've got Herbert in the flex with Keenan Allen and Joshua Kelly. Looks good. Nick Foles with Pierce. Looks good. Herbert in the flex with Everett and Kelly. Nick Foles, Michael Pittman. Love it. Herbert with just Joshua Kelly. Again, I think it's fine. Herbert, you could even run without any pass catchers in some lineups, as I said earlier. So, pairing him with the running back, don't mind that. Here we've got Nick Foles in the flex with just Zach Moss as a pass catcher. I think it's viable. I think that Zach Moss, could be involved in the passing game. We don't know exactly what to expect with the Foles-Moss connection, but, Zach Moss is a capable enough pass catcher. I think I'm okay with this. Herbert with Eckler and Kelly looks good. Herbert in the MVP with multiple pass catchers. Foles in the MVP with multiple pass catchers. Yeah, everything looks good here. I think all these lineups correlate well enough. The other thing I want to check is I'm going to look at in the MVP spot, Herbert MVP lineup specifically. All right, the most I'm getting of anybody is 70% Gerald Everett, so I'm okay with that. I'm not like getting 100% of anybody in those Herbert MVP lineups. That was my concern. And then Nick Foles MVP lineups. Yeah, so of his pass catchers, not getting, a huge amount of anybody. We are getting 92% Justin Herbert, but I think that's just because Herbert's in a lot of lineups. So looks good. Everything correlates well enough. No major concerns there. And then the other part of it is looking at individual players. I go position by position to see how much I'm getting of everybody. And I'm not really making decisions right now. I'm just showing you my general process. So, this could change. I don't generally make my actual lineups until after inactives come out about an hour and a half before the game starts. So these are not my final decisions. Just showing you my general process. So I look at this quarterback getting to 79% Herbert, 32% Foles. So that's a lot of Justin Herbert. Maybe I want to lower his projection. I probably don't want him in all of my lineups. But I'm not going to change his projection just yet. I'll probably change other players first. And if I'm still getting to like 100% Justin Herbert, maybe I'll come back and lower it. Running back. Okay, so I'm not getting much Austin Eckler at all. I probably want more than 1% of Austin Eckler. We know he's a guy who could put up 3 touchdowns, have 10 catches. He could just go off in any game. So even though his projection relative to his salary isn't, all that great, which is why we're only getting 1%, we know he has a huge ceiling. So I think that I will want more Austin Eckler. So I'll give him a little bit of a boost. Zach Moss and Deion Jackson getting to about 20% of each. That looks fine. Getting to a lot of Josh Kelly. That kind of surprises me, but it's just the 5.2 projection with the 7,000 salary. I'm going to leave him where he is for now. I'm not going to make any adjustment. He might come down as I adjust other players. Jordan Wilkins, not currently in the player pool. Who knows? Maybe he gets more involved with Jonathan Taylor out. So maybe I'll get him into the player pool. Now I'm going to leave out Isaiah Spiller and Xander Horvath. Maybe that'll change later. We'll see. Wide receivers, not getting to a ton of anybody. The most I'm getting of anybody is Alec Pierce, 31%. Pretty interesting. I think that I'd probably want more of some of these guys. So Keenan Allen currently getting 21%. about where he is. Michael Pittman, 11%. I think I'd want more than that. Give him a little bit of a bigger boost. Mike Williams, we know he has huge upside and he's relatively inexpensive. I'm going to give him a boost, get some more of Mike Williams. Josh Palmer, just 4%. Give him a boost. Paris Campbell, 15%. Again, I don't know exactly how much I want of these players right now. I just kind of, this is where I'm doing trial and error. I'm just giving little boosts, kind of doing it by feel. And then after I have run another crunch, I'll see if I need to adjust further. And then Ashton Doolin, not currently my player, who will project for just 1.5% ownership. Definitely have some interest in Ashton Doolin at 1.5% ownership. So I'm going to give him a little bit of a boost, get him into the player pool. DeAndre Carter, maybe the same thing. He's a wide receiver 4, not going to be especially involved, but I'll get him in there as well. And tight ends. Okay, the wide receivers don't look as good because we're getting so much of the tight ends. 46% Gerald Everett. Not going to change his projection. I imagine I'm probably going to get a little bit less, again, because I'm adjusting other players. Jelani Woods. I have some interest in Jelani Woods tonight. I know that already. He had a huge game a couple weeks ago with Kylan Granson out. Now Kylan Granson is out again. We could see Jelani Woods be more involved as a result. So I'm going to get him a little bit of a boost, try and get more Jelani Woods. Mo Alley Cox, actually, same thing. He should be more involved with Kylan Granson out. So I'm going to make sure I'm still getting a good amount of Mo Alley Cox. Donald Parham at just 3% ownership. He's only 6,500. We know that Donald Parham is always an end zone threat. If he scores a touchdown at 6,500, he might make it into the optimal with just one catch. And of course, he could have a few catches and one could be a touchdown. So I want to get some Donald Parham at low projected ownership. For now, I don't think I'm interested in McKitty or Kalinick, just because they're both tight end 3s, and even the tight end 2s are getting relatively low ownership. So for now, I'm just going to focus on getting more of those tight end 2s. Kickers, yeah, not getting too much of the kickers at all. I think I probably want more than that in my lineups. So I'll give these guys boosts. Defenses, I probably want about what I'm getting right now, just to keep up with the other changes I made. I'll give a little boost here. I'll crunch it out again. Yeah, still kick defenses in about the range where I would like to be. Kickers, maybe I need 15%. Chase McLaughlin seems fine. Cameron Dicker probably want more than 4%, so maybe I'll give him more of a boost. And again, at this point, I'm not making actual lineup decisions right now, just showing you my general process. So now I go through tight ends. I see I'm getting 30% Gerald Everett. That seems fine. 33% Jelani Woods. It's aggressive, but honestly, I might be okay with that. I like to be aggressive on FanDuel in particular when I see players getting, under 10% ownership, and I think they've got a real shot to put up a big game. I don't mind being a little bit aggressive. So if I get 33% Jelani Woods, I probably don't mind that. Same thing with Donald Parham at 2.7% ownership. I might want even more than 10% of Donald Parham. So I might come in and give him an even bigger boost. Mo Alley Cox, same thing. All these guys coming in relatively low owned, and I think all of them have a real shot here. So maybe give them bigger boosts. Wide receivers, still not getting to a ton of most of these guys. So maybe I'd make little adjustments here. Ashton Doolin, DeAndre Carter, these are both similar to tight ends. I think they'll have fewer opportunities. I think the tight ends are actually in better spots. But at this low of ownership, I still have some interest in getting well above the field on these guys as well. Alec Pierce, relatively reasonable ownership at 17%. Want to make sure I'm still getting some Alec Pierce in there. Campbell. Josh Palmer. Now I'm getting a lot of Josh Palmer, 21%. I don't feel that strongly about Josh Palmer here. I do think that I'll be on the field a good amount. He's the wide receiver 3. Probably if I'm right around the field, I'd be okay with it. Mike Williams, like to see him getting above the field here. Close to the field on Pittman. A little bit under the field on Keenan Allen. Might be okay with it. Running back, still getting only 2% Austin Eckler. So I'd probably make a bigger adjustment here. A bigger boost there. Because I do want to get some Austin Eckler in my lineups. Zach Moss and Deion Jackson, pretty low Not getting a ton of exposure to these guys. Maybe I'd want to get a little bit more. Still getting 17% Josh Kelly. I don't feel that strongly about Joshua Kelly. There are other players I like better. Jordan Wilkins, 3.3%. I mean, I'm triple the field there. Probably okay. Maybe just to keep it right around there. Slight boost. And then finally, at quarterback, I'm still getting to nearly 100% Justin Herbert when you include MVP and flex ownership. So maybe I'd finally just give him a little bit of a downward boost. That'll probably get it. More likely that I get more Austin Eckler as well. Nick Foles, I'm getting 25%. Maybe I want to stay right around there. See what happens if I crunch out again. And now you can see here. So I'm getting, a lot less Justin Herbert, but I'm still getting 63% in the flex plus 20% in the MVP spot. So, still getting 83% Justin Herbert after lowering his ownership, which I'm totally happy with that. I think this looks good. 63% Herbert, 30% Foles. Now I'm up to 20% Eckler. That looks a little bit more reasonable to me. Still getting a reasonable amount of Moss and Jackson. You can see I'm getting closer to where I want to be on these guys. 8% Josh Kelly. That seems more reasonable to me than the 30%, whatever I started at. I'm getting closer to where I want to be on these players. And this is just what I do. I just make incremental adjustments bit by bit until I get to exposure levels that I like. And you can see I'm getting closer here. I'm still getting a good amount of Alec Pierce. Now I've got Doolin and Carter in my player pool, getting some Campbell, Palmer, more reasonable amounts of those guys. Mike Williams getting a reasonable amount. Now I'm not getting to a ton of Pittman and Keenan Allen. Maybe I give a little boost there. Not sure exactly. Tight ends, now I'm getting to, pretty reasonable amount of all of these guys, taking big stands on Jelani Woods, Donald Parham, Moelle Cox, getting above the field on all of these guys, right around the field on Gerald Everett because he's already getting reasonable ownership. Now I'm getting to somewhere in the teens with the kickers. That's generally kind of where I aim to be. Of course, it does change game to game. I always look at the top single games tool, which shows the results of these Stokastic simulations. Sometimes kickers look really good, and I want to get more than this amount. But generally, as a baseline, I want to start with somewhere in the teens with the kickers, and then I'll adjust if they look really good in our tools. And defense is kind of the same thing. I want to be somewhere in the teens unless they look really good on a given slate or I have some reason that I want to get to a lot more of them. So right now, if I'm getting 6% Colts, I probably want more than 6%. Obviously, it's all dependent on the slate. It's all dependent on the defense themselves, etc. But I think this will do it for this video, just showing you my general process. I'm not going to go through all of my crunches here, but this is my general process. I'm looking at how much I'm getting of different players. What do my cards actually look like? What do the lineups themselves look like? And again, I can see here Herbert with multiple pass catchers looks good. When I've got Foles in the MVP, I've got multiple pass catchers. I like that with Herbert in the flex. All of these look like they correlate well enough to me, and I'm getting closer to the exposure levels that I like of different players. So getting close to where I want to be on these. This is my process. Hope you can find some success tonight using this or a similar process.